Welcome to the Empower Hour, everyone. This is our weekly broadcast. If you're new to the group, this is something that we do every single week just to give you tips and give you some guidance as you try to move on with your life after leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships, dating, marriage, sex, all that good stuff. We're going to be talking about it in a very real honest way because this is one of the biggest parts of life. If this part of your life is right, life is pretty good. If you struggle with this part of life is hard. And this is something a lot of ex witnesses or witnesses are not prepared to deal with. You know, when we were witnesses, most people were very unequipped for marriage, for relationships. Most of us got into something when we were very young, unprepared, did not understand the opposite sex, had no experience with the opposite sex, and ended up in situations that we were not prepared for. I say that most of us got what I call a sex license, right? You didn't want to get in trouble with the organization, so you got married at a young age, right? We all have things going on in our bodies at a young age and we don't want to get in trouble. So we marry somebody we don't really know. We marry for the wrong reasons. And we end up in a situation we were not prepared for. Most times people get married just from physical attraction. If it's not physical attraction, it's just because someone had what we call spiritual qualifications, right? Oh, he's a ministerial servant. Oh, he's a Bethelite. Oh, she's a pioneer. Nothing to do with chemistry. We didn't even know what chemistry was. We didn't even know what being in resonance with somebody was. We didn't really know what connection was. And we end up being married to a stranger. I remember I got married. My wife was 18 years old. Who knows themselves at 18? I was 22, almost 23. I didn't know myself. I was still like a kid. And I had to get to know someone after being married to them. It's a little bit backwards, right? I felt like I can't get out of this. I remember my first week of marriage, we were actually still on our honeymoon, where I was like, what did I get myself into? Right? Seeing sides of a person, and sure, it was the same for her, that you didn't know. I married a kid that I didn't know because you're not allowed to spend the kind of time that you need to spend to get to know someone. You're not having serious conversations, the kind of conversations you have when you're spending one on one time with someone. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. You're trying to hurry up and get married before you get in trouble. And most witnesses fall in this category. Young marriages of two strangers, and then you get to know each other, and you marry for the wrong reasons. Not only do you marry for the wrong reasons, you're marrying a character. You're marrying who this person is presenting to you. And most witnesses are not the person that they're presenting to the congregation. That is your character, that's your witness character. There's other aspects to you that other people don't know. And then suddenly you're married to someone and you're faced with this other side of someone that they did not show to you the whole time that you were dating. You were dating each other's characters, and then now you're married. That's tough. People have hidden issues, right? Because they were never allowed to really explore sides of themselves. They weren't allowed to be open about sides of themselves because we all know when we're young and we're going through puberty and we're teenagers and then we're young adults, things are happening. Things are happening in our bodies. I remember being 13 years old and going through puberty, and my next door neighbors, I told this story before, I think. I used to have next door neighbors that I figured out later in life, they're probably strippers or something, but they used to lay out naked in the backyard, right? I'm 13 years old, opening my curtain, looking at these girls laying out there, and feeling so guilty, like Jehovah's going to punish me. And my parents would never ever even address it because it was an uncomfortable topic. Like, I mean, if it was me today, it was my kids, I'd be like, son, I know why you're in your room all the time. Come on, let's have a real discussion here. But they wouldn't touch the subject. And it's just funny looking back how um, my parents wouldn't talk about something that was very natural. I'm 13 years old. What do you think I'm doing? Right. But they were uncomfortable with it. And most of you had the same experience if you grew up a witness where your parents wouldn't talk about these things. So what happens is you begin to kind of have a side of yourself that you feel like you're struggling with, but you're not. It's not a struggle. That's what happens at that age. That's what happens when these hormones are running through your body, but you're putting a side of yourself and you're ashamed of a side of yourself, and you get married, and then people might have hidden issues because they could not express themselves. They could not be real about it. Hence, um, a lot of you women got married and found out that your husband had a pornography addiction. Well, where did that come from? Well, it came from him hiding a side of himself and being ashamed of it and having these things going on that he couldn't put anywhere. So he develops this hidden habit and he gets married. And as a witness, you think that, okay, when I get married, then that will go away. It doesn't go away. It has nothing to do with your spouse, right? So these people end up with this issue and they bring it into their marriage, thinking that marriage is going to help it go away. It doesn't do that. It's just something that you're adding layers to. And this is what happens when you're just not honest with yourself, or you're just not honest about that side of yourself. You end up with things that you bring into your marriage. And then when that happens and you find out these secret sides of someone or that they have these issues, it creates trust issues because you know that they're hiding something. And if they're hiding that, what else are they hiding? And then it gives a woman esteem issues. Am I not good enough? Why do you have to do that? Has nothing to do with you. That's an issue that they brought into the marriage. And a woman might have her own thing that she brings into the marriage. So this creates distrust and a whole lot of issues in the marriage. And then you have bedroom issues, right? Because the witnesses went right into your bedroom and told you things that you can and cannot do. Right. And it's you got all this shame attached to things having to do with relationships and sex. And women have had a lot of issues in that religion because number one, the witnesses always painted it as being something that's for a man, right? Women, render your due. Can there be anything less sexy than render your due? Right? Like you're just a place of release for a man. Women women have their own sexuality that they're trying to express, but where does that flourish in that religion? Right? Some people just have a way about them. Some people have an energy. Some people might be just naturally more sexual, right? And there's an energy to that. And how many women, a lot of you watching will identify to this, were counseled because of the way your bodies were shaped. Some people you'd have to wear a giant garbage bag, right? To not show yourself. Some people are just endowed a certain way, and you are made to feel ashamed of that. Some people just have a way about them that just has an energy to it. And those people were criticized or looked at a certain way because they carried that energy. It's just who you are. And over time, getting this criticism, being looked a certain way because of the way you are as a human being, puts a lot of shame on that. And then you bring that into your marriage, right? Being a witness gives you no sense of self. You're playing a character and you bring a character that is not realistic to a marriage. Being a witness also gives you unnatural relationships with the opposite sex. So you don't have the interactions that other people have with the opposite sex. Everything is all these boundaries. So you really don't learn as a young man or woman to make platonic friendships. You just don't. I mean, it's the very surface. I remember in times where I was trying to get to know someone and I would make arrangements before field service to work with some young sister when I was a young man. And more times than not, the person that was conducting the card group would nah, I think she should work with this and put me with someone I didn't want to work with. We made arrangements and they'd break it up. I couldn't even go out in service with somebody I might have been interested in. Right. So how are you supposed to get to know the opposite sex? So witnesses go into relationships not knowing about the opposite sex at all, and that creates problems. You end up getting in fights that are just issues that they're not even issues. Men are men, women are women, but you just don't know that. So you go in fighting about things that are just natural differences between men and women because you never had natural relationships the way the rest of the world did. Women hang out with women, men hang out with men. And you just have a twisted view of it, right? Witnesses kind of teach you that everything is a potential problem or everything is a potential danger. So they're creating a scenario where you think all interactions or being alone at all with the opposite sex naturally become sexual. And that's not the case. That's not true. But it's also why you have so many scandals with witnesses because it's like you're told that you can't control your urges if you're with the opposite sex, and then they don't because they're looking, men are constantly looking at women in a sexual way, even though they think they're not. Because they haven't learned how to communicate with the opposite sex. They haven't learned how to be platonic. They are acting as if any interaction instantly is sexual. You know, if people I've seen people be put on reproof because they were in the same house alone for more than a certain amount of time. I've seen people get disfellowship for stuff like that, and it wasn't sexual, right? So they're making everything what it's not, and this gives us a very twisted view of the opposite sex. When you leave the religion, you're going to have conversations about the doubt that you possess. So let's talk about once you're in a relationship and you want to leave. Well, you're going to have to be able to communicate. And some of you might be in this situation right now. A good marriage is open to communications about all things. A good marriage has trust. You know where trust comes from? Trust comes from open communication. That's where trust comes from. When a person is able to communicate about things that are uncomfortable, about things that are tough to talk about. When you know your mate can come to you about everything, that's where trust is built. In my marriage, there was a lack of trust because there was a lot of things I couldn't talk about because I it's a choice to either talk about this thing or have peace. And I wanted peace. So there's a lot of things I wouldn't talk about. So if you're in that position where obviously all of you have left the religion or in the process of leaving, you have to be able to communicate with your partner and not feel like there's something I can't talk about. A good relationship has great communication. So if you're in that situation, you got to communicate. You can't hold things back. You got to be free to talk. And when you're talking about the doubts that you're having, make sure you're talking about from an aspect of this is how I feel. I'm not telling you how to feel, but I'm going to be honest about how I feel. So don't communicate in a way where you're trying to tell them what to think, but be free to express what you think yourself. Now, if you make it through um, leaving with the same partner, there are certain things you're going to have to do in your relationship so it can thrive. Some of you are fortunate enough to have left with your partner. You've got to give the other person some space to grow. So that means you got to give that other person some autonomy because they're trying to find themselves after leaving the religion, a religion that defined them. They've got to find themselves. You're going to have to relearn your partner because you were in a religion that defined you. It defined you. So this person is not going to be the same person. You got to be okay with that. You got to see who this person becomes outside the religion, who this person becomes outside the community of people they've always been around. You're going to have to relearn your mate. You're going to be married to somebody very different. So make the space for that. Try to dive into personal development together. That's something you can do together, is explore together, grow together. You're not going to grow exactly the same. Leave some space for autonomy. You're not going to think exactly the same things. Unlike witnesses who all think the same things, you're just like this, moving with the same beliefs because it's all programming. Leave some space for autonomy, but grow together as much as you can. Just be growing. Talk about everything, even uncomfortable things. Open yourself up. Again, now you're going to be able to be free in your life. Be free about things that you held within the context of the witnesses. So talk about everything. I would suggest that if you're with the same partner, to date again. Go out on dates, make it fresh. Spice it up. The witnesses are not in your bedroom anymore, so have fun. Get to know a new person, right? If you got to go and take your vows again and vows as two non-witnesses, go ahead and do that, but spice up your life. Date again. I would suggest to seek counseling, not counseling because you might need counseling because you're having problems, but you might need counseling to learn to navigate this new world. And sometimes a third party can help you navigate the new world. So go ahead and do that. With elders, if you called elders into your home, all they did was point at scriptures that you already knew. They didn't really help you navigate. But now you can have a third party to help you navigate. And I would say also find couples, invite couples into your life, whether they're ex-witness couples or just people you meet. Um, just get out there, get with people, and don't be ashamed of your past. It's just a part of your journey. Now, for those of you who split up because of the religion, maybe you split up for another reason. Maybe you've never been married. Once you leave the religion, make sure that you take time to find yourself first. There's always a temptation to jump right into relationships because you lost so much. You lost all your community, you lost your friends, you lost your family. And the first thing we want to do is grab onto somebody. That's a natural desire. Sometimes it works out. I'm not going to say it never works. You're lucky if it does, because finding yourself is very important. You'll only find a match of what you are normally. So if you feel broken, you'll naturally attract another broken person. Broken people like to fix the other person, and the other person likes to fix you. And brokenness still leaves brokenness. Who are you outside the religion? Get a firm grasp on you before creating this other entity. That would be my suggestion, because relationships are its own entity. So if this entity of you is still broken, creating another entity of a relationship is going to take a lot of your time and attention and really not address the brokenness. Embrace your time alone. Your time alone can be your greatest time of growth. Sometimes people ask, should I get with an XJW or not? And this is my thought about that. You may agree or disagree. The worst mate if we still feel broken, is another broken XJW. You'll just talk about the same stuff. You got the same brokenness. You got the same problem. There's no way to learn in that scenario because what happens normally is the religion stays the main topic. It was the main topic when you're in the religion. It's the main topic when you're out of the religion, and you have the same brokenness, and neither one can help each other. Now, a healed XJW is great because you do understand the journey, but you're not broken. That's great. You understand why the family doesn't want to deal with you. That sounds crazy to most people. You understand things with the holidays. Maybe you don't have a propensity to celebrate Christmas or your birthday still. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but some people just don't have a desire because they didn't grow up with that, and the person understands that. Well, once you healed yourself, dating somebody that never was an XGW is a great idea too, right? Because you learn things, you're exposed to things that you weren't exposed to as a JW, so that works out too. So the main thing is that you heal yourself, and then you could go in either direction. Heal yourself first. Integrate your past and be open about it with whoever you're with. Integrate. It doesn't mean that you're defined by your past, but it's not something you got to act like it didn't happen. Integrate everything so you can move forward, and it's just a part of your journey. It's not the journey, it's just a part of your journey. Make sure you bring a complete person to the table. You want to be complete. You don't want to be this person looking for another person to complete you, because if it doesn't work, you start at zero again. Bring a complete person to the table. Don't let your relationships define you. Sometimes you're just looking to be defined by something outside of you, and you'll be disappointed over and over and over again, because that's a big burden. A lot of times people end up disappointed because they put so much pressure on another person, and then the relationship doesn't work because the person didn't want all that pressure, because your life is being defined, and they feel that pressure that you're putting on them to make them happy. You gotta learn to be happy from within. Don't let relationships define you. Before you get in a relationship, define your priorities. Know what your priorities are so that you can be with someone in sync. So sometimes you want different things. Sometimes you can be um, feel like a decent match, but you want different things. Be honest about where you are in life. Be honest about the season of life you're in. Sometimes you just might want different things, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're letting go your priorities to fulfill somebody else. What are your priorities in life? What's important to you? Know your deal breakers also. I won't deal with this or that. Personally, I won't deal with disrespectful talk. I won't deal with people that slam doors and slam cabinets and stomp all over the place. That kind of aggressive behavior, that's a deal breaker for me. I already know that. What are your deal breakers? Understand that going in. Understand your priorities, what's important to you, and understand your deal breakers, right? So if somebody has an importance on, let's say, use an example here. If travel is important to somebody and another person just does not desire that, understand that. It's really important to you. If your faith, maybe you left the witnesses and you have another faith and it's the main thing in your life, and the person just doesn't have any kind of regard for that. Well, it doesn't make anybody wrong, but that might not be a great match for you. That's just an easy um, source of frustration. Understand your priorities, understand your deal breakers. Understand that relationships can be a reason, season, or lifetime. With witnesses, even when you dated someone, say you were dated and you got engaged and you saw red flags and you wanted to change your mind, you were told not to. You were counseled for that. Like if you got engaged, you had to marry this person. No, you learn through relationships. Be open to get to know people and be open to change your mind. You get more clarity on the different ways people can be through different experiences you might have. You might come out the gate and knock it out the park and meet somebody that's a perfect match. Or it could be a reason, a season, or a lifetime. It can run its course, and you might say, you know what? Yeah, this I've learned through this relationship that doesn't work for me. But I love that I learned these things and I learned to experience these things. Now I know more of what I want and I know more what I won't stand for. So, reason, a season, or a lifetime. Just be okay with things not working out sometimes as you go through the process, and don't commit yourself to something that's not going to work. When you see red flags, you can change your mind. Witnesses can't change their mind about stuff, right? You just commit to things. When we're witnesses, we committed to baptism when we're 12, 13 years old. We committed to marriage at 20. All these big decisions that you can't change your mind on. No, you can change your mind. It's okay. If you're a growing person, another thing to realize, if you're a person that's going through a lot of growth in your life, then realize you need to be with a growing person. If you're growing and the person's not growing, you're going to outgrow that person. That's not going to be fun. So if you're a growing person, be with a growing person. And women, it's really important that you learn to define yourself. As witnesses, you were your husband's sidekick. You weren't really respected for your mind, for your opinions, for whatever leadership skills you had. But it's 2024. It's not the way the world works. Learn to define yourself so you don't keep giving all your power away to a relationship. And it could look different ways. People are different. I'm not going to say what it should look like, but you have to know who you are. You get to define yourself. You're not somebody who just gets lost and walked over by your husband, right? That whole headship thing. Some people might still roll that way. Some people might roll differently. But regardless of how you define that today, it's not, we're not living 2,000 years ago. We're in 2024. However way you decide that needs to look in your relationships, you still have to define yourself. This is why sometimes um, women that can end up alone have a hard time have a hard time with it, because they need to be defined by a man, because they have no identity outside of a relationship. And sometimes you can end up alone for a very long time that way. You can feel lost for a very long time that way. So learn to define yourself so you bring a complete person to the table. And men lose the need to have total control over a woman. That the whole witness thing where you're just domineering, where she has no voice. That's not going to work today. That's not going to work in 2024. You know, women have a voice. I mean, we're here in America and a woman's running for president. Wow. Women have a voice. We're not living 2,000 years ago. So lose that. Learn to work with someone. Learn to dance with someone. Learn to let people lead where they have strengths. If you're with a woman and she has strengths here, let her lead in those areas and you lead in these areas. Find out what's important to you, but don't just walk over thinking that everything a man thinks is superior. When you're a witness and you go out in field service and there's no men and there's a 15-year-old baptized boy, he's in charge because he's male. That's silly. That's stupid. So we got to lose that as men. Focus on your friendships. When you get in relationships, focus on the friendship part. The romance part will be there, but sometimes people just focus on the romantic part and they're not friends. Some of you were married for 25, 30 years and were never friends with your mate. That was your husband, that was your wife, but you weren't friends. I was married 18 years and I can't say my ex wife was my friend. She was my wife. She was a dutiful wife, but she was not my friend. Big difference. Understand your worth. Before you get in relationships, understand your worth, or your worth will only be the relationship. Understand your worth. If you don't feel worthy, work on that first. Work on that first. Work on your worth. So when you feel worthy, you also get way more selective on the person you pick because you got worth. I'm not putting up with that. When you know your worth and someone else doesn't know their worth, you're not getting with that. You're not getting with broken. You'll have standards for yourself. Know your worth. And always feel free to change your mind. You're growing, you could change your mind about things in life, right? So, great discussion. I think we're going to have an interesting panel. Let's bring our panel up. We got Dean, we got Gary, we got Christine, we got Judy, and we got three today. All right, so this should be a good discussion. I covered a lot of things. Who wants to start off? I'm sure we got a lot of contributions today. So raise your hand if you want to start. Let's start with Judy.
Just want to say, being raised and like you was married at 18 and my husband was 20. So you don't know who you are and you're growing up together. We also were not equipped to deal with breakups, or I love how you said a reason, a season, or a lifetime, because we were always, if someone was your friend, whether you were in reticence with them or not, that was it. That's your relationship for a lifetime. We weren't equipped on how to deal with a breakup. And that's something, even with friendships, that I have learned to, after leaving the organization, to realize that, some people are in your relationship or in a friendship with you for a season. And it doesn't mean that I'm a terrible person. It doesn't mean that they're a terrible person. You just grow apart. You have different interests. It was great when it lasted. And now we move on to something else. So that's something that, I really appreciate those three words: reason, season, or lifetime. And know that it's acceptable to change your mind. You were paired with someone. So I think what's hard for ex-witnesses is to realize, normal people do not go to dinner and date with a view to marriage. Like we were always taught, you date with a view to marriage. So you're with people that, you're thinking in your head, oh God, like now we have to get married. Like this is what it's in front of me. And, a normal adult person is like getting to know you. They're not thinking like we're dating with a view to marriage. No, normal people date with a view to get to know the other person. So that's like a mindset that, we have to adjust to. Normalcy. You get to know somebody. You're not like on a date. So we're thinking about marriage.
What's so funny is I was 21 years old and I'd gotten in trouble. I'd go to the back room and confess my sins. And I'm like, I gotta get married because this no sex thing's not working for me. I'm 21. I gotta get married. I literally made a list of 10 women, 10 girls.
Well, they're probably we made the cut.
I literally made a list, right? And was trying to spend time with one of these 10, and sure enough, my ex-wife was on that list. But it's crazy because it's not how it works. You may as well have an arranged marriage if it's like that, right? Because I just didn't want to get in trouble again, right? And it's so crazy. It's so crazy. Thanks for the share, Christine.
I also was a childhood bride at 19. And but I had already left the witnesses at 13, and so I was in the Baptist faith. Same thing, pretty much. Just like you have this chastity belt on. If you have sex before marriage, you're a whore, and then you get married, and you're supposed to be this sex goddess in the bedroom. But I joked with my mom a couple years ago, and I'm almost 50 now. I'm like, you never gave us the key. We still had the chastity belt on. Like no one taught us what to do or how to be in a relationship. And so, being so young and looking to our elders or to those who were guiding us, we had marriage counseling. So I thought, okay, this is really good. But then we found out halfway through he was sleeping with the secretary. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a letdown. So just I feel like that disappointment in the beginning of what does a real healthy marriage look like. I didn't have a great example of that. So trying to fumble through, trying to learn, and then I was divorced by 24. We grew apart. That was, totally what Judy said. It was just like we were on two different paths and they were night and day. And so it was, very devastating at 24 because I had this expectation of we will be married forever. It's like the storybook. And now that I'm, looking back, grateful for it happening and all the healing that's happened. But where I feel many of us are still stuck in is this savior kind of complex of like someone will save us. For us women, we definitely need to feel safe, and men can provide that. We have to find our own safety. But taking a look at your life now and being sure that you're not looking for someone else to save you, that no one's going to save you, it's you. And to take a look at that self-responsibility so that you know who you are, just like you said, Rodney. That's like the biggest thing, even if you are in a relationship or you're single, really taking stock of who am I, and am I living in my authentic truth?
Yeah, yeah. So that's when you find resonance, when you know who you are and someone's attracted to that,
Yeah.
your energy, right? You'll find that people, the reason why you didn't have to know that as a witness is because you all believe the same thing. So that wasn't even on the table. And you didn't realize you were different until you got married. Until you had to spend that kind of time with someone, you didn't realize how different you were because everything you could see was connected. I'm a witness, you're a witness. I go out and service, on Saturdays or whatever it was, right? Even your social activities, they're very in unison. That whole organization moves in a unison, right? So you find out things later. I mean, I can't tell you how many women that I have coached and worked with here that told me they thought they had this great guy and he was abusive. Who sees that? Who sees he's got an anger problem? You don't present that to the congregation. That's a private thing. And when you get close to somebody, that part comes out, or verbally abusive or whatever it is, because they are never the person they're presenting. That's a character. And they don't realize it's a character, but it is. Okay, next. Larry?
Yeah, I want to get this out while I'm thinking about it. And Christine, what you just said about women needing and looking for security and safety. I've been thinking about this for like the last hour or 2 hours, and I've been thinking like, wow, how am I going to put this together? That kind of was the glue that this is going to be about. And this is just about myself. I'm not an expert on this, not even close. But I've learned in very quite recently a lot about triggers that I never would have understood before. And just one example is what drives me crazy, what I actually hate more than just about anything else, is being misunderstood and misinterpreted. Actually hate it. And when it happens, it hurts. Even though it happens all the time. I mean, every day of your life, somebody's going to misunderstand you, But when it happens with somebody that's supposed to be close to me, it just hurts. And when you're hurting, who are you thinking about, or what are you thinking about? You're just thinking about yourself, really. You're not thinking like, why did the person just say what they do? Why did they just accuse me of that? Or in other words, what's behind it? Is there a good reason for it? Is it maybe an insecurity on their part? It's just a trigger with me. It just triggers me, and the reaction isn't good. But what I've learned to look at is, first of all, myself. How why those triggers happen, and also just realizing, without trying to analyze the other person psychologically, that they just were responding to a trigger. If I was just accused of staring at a waitress or something, and I know it's wrong, I know I didn't do that. Well, why did the person say it? Well, maybe it's because of an insecurity. So rather than just react in my own world and just say, how dare you say that to me? The idea is to think about the other person. So we can only work on ourselves. And I was going to try to make this a lot more brief than it already is, but in terms of working on ourselves, what I see happen all the time with post JWs is that the tendency is to blame everything on the JWs. I wouldn't be like this. I wouldn't be like that if it wasn't for the JWs. You may be 80 or 90% right. I don't know. Maybe with me, it's not, because I wasn't traumatized with the JWs. I was 16 and I made the decision on my own without my family. So my issues go back to childhood, have nothing to do with the JWs. So it's easier to see it that way. but I've seen it where people, and not necessarily people I've dated, but just I've seen it where when so much of their problems are blamed on the JWs and they work on that, and that's great, and because they're probably 80-90% right and they're working on the right thing, but that 10 or 20% that they're not seeing realistically is never going to be resolved. It's never going to be resolved because we're not looking at it the realistic way. Especially when we're talking about childhood trauma, when children are traumatized, they don't see the picture for what it is. They just react and develop defense mechanisms the way a 5 or 6 year old knows how to do. They don't know how to do anything. So 30, 40, 50 years later, we misinterpret something and we make a big issue about something, and we don't even ourselves know that it's because of the way I was treated when I was 5 or 6, and our memory of what happened when we were 5 or 6 is probably not accurate. There are some things that if we really could see it for what it was, maybe talk to an adult that was there or knows about it, or a therapist, we're probably going to see another part of the whole picture that it is going to help us heal. So I'm going to stop there because I probably talked too much already. But again, the point is that with me, it's a trigger. It's my trigger, and it's the other person's trigger. And it's a matter of recognizing it as such.
One thing that's important for those of you who are, wanting to be in a relationship is resonance. Okay. You could be in the same house and be looking out of different windows. So if one person's looking at the ocean, the other person's on the other side of the house looking at a mountain, and you're arguing about what you see. Neither person's wrong, but it's about resonance. So when you're in a relationship where I didn't say that, I didn't mean that, you're misunderstanding me. No, you're twisting my words. And it's not your truth. You're probably just out of resonance. And when it's like that, it doesn't get better. It will never get better. It's like that song, if you don't know me by now, you will never, ever, ever know. Right. So if you're accused of things that you would never do, you're probably with somebody you're out of resonance with, because they're looking at your actions through their eyes. And what you're doing, if they did it, means this, but you doing it doesn't mean that. So now, if you're single, you get to find someone you're in resonance with, which means you look out of similar windows, right? At least you're on the same side of the house. You might be not looking out the exact same window, but we both see the ocean from the window we're looking at. So it makes it a lot easier to be with somebody you're in resonance with. Not about right or wrong. Most times it's about resonance. Thank you. Agree?
Can I just add to that really quick? The reason why I mentioned Christine's comment, I didn't really tie it in properly, is because in a theoretical, hypothetical situation where that happens, where the man is accused of whatever, and it's really because of an insecurity on the other person's part, that is a woman who needs security and needs safety. And if you miss that, you really, really missed it, And I did a bunch of times where it's like, this woman is basically telling you I don't know what the right way to handle something like that is, but I know the wrong way is to just erupt as, I was hurt. How dare you accuse me of that? Because it is all about, and this is just one aspect of men and women, the one Christine mentioned, that women need security and safety. Anyway, I'm done.
You got to go to Bree. Okay, Bree.
Just to build on top of all of that, I also was a part of the Married by 18 club. And my discoveries, I was married for 12 years. It wasn't until I was 30 that I really had the opportunity, after I left my ex and the religion, to turn inward and to look at myself, to figure out who the heck I am, not who everyone told me I should be or what was expected of me by everybody else. But it really gave me the opportunity to look in and figure out who I am at my core. After taking off the veil of everything that's been piled on top and healing yourself, because when you realize that you see the world as you are, just like you said, Rodney, you mentioned resonance. If we've all experienced a very similar trauma with the JWs, and we all took something different away from that experience. It affected us differently based on who we are and what we went through. And so healing those traumas is going to help our filter of life, how we take on other people, how we view relationships and situations. And so what I'm realizing is, in relationship with other people, if I'm looking outside of myself for something, I'm never going to find it. I have to turn inward, and I have to give myself what I'm expecting another person to give me in a relationship. I have to be that for myself before I'm going to attract somebody who is able and capable to give that to myself, if that makes sense. What is that saying? If you don't love yourself, then you're not going to have love to give another person. So self-love, healing those traumas, those hurts. And if we don't believe that we're worthy of love, then we're going to constantly resist that love when another person is trying to give it to us. So doing that inner work, turning in, not looking outside of ourselves for something that we are needing and that we want. If we want security from another person, then we have to be secure in who we are.
Absolutely. And just, you're a good example of somebody who is consciously taking the time to be with yourself, to find yourself. And I want to highlight that, because especially with women, because men come at women. You got a ton of opportunities if you wish to take advantage of that, but you are intentionally taking time to get to know yourself. So just because opportunities come and people are coming after you and they know you're single, sometimes you have to say, you know what, no, I'm taking this season, get to know myself, so that when I'm ready, the natural process will happen. The right person will show up because of who I become, not just because I'm available. So make sure that you live your life with intention. Everybody out there, live your life with intention. If you need to take the time to grow, take that time. Take that time to know you, so that you know if something's for the person you've become, right? So don't make yourself the priority. Put yourself in first position. Thank you for the share. Dean?
I just want to add straight into what Bree said then, what you just said as well. I found a diary. I haven't lived up to it as well as when I wrote this, but about a year and a half ago, I wrote down that my intention was to be the best version of myself, that when I meet the right person, that we can add to each other's lives. And I was just reminded of the other day, I met somebody that I dated about a year and a half ago. And I just felt I needed to see her, and I said, it's time to keep to that, and it's what you can do for yourself. But I want to go back a bit to just a couple of things that I thought about with the whole thing, with the JW thing, with relationships, is that it's almost like when you saw somebody that you wanted to go on a date with, it's almost you to have a date in mind of when the marriage was going to happen. I mean, I jokingly set up a coffee date with somebody the other day, and I said, no, it's fine. In the second half an hour, we can talk about the wedding arrangements and what kind of wedding you'd like, summer, winter, and all. And she started laughing, and I just laughed. I said, it's kind of like you almost had to sit down and say, well, do you want to have children? And, and then, within a week or two, you'd have the elders going, well, brother, what is your intentions? And I'm thinking there was just so much pressure on that whole situation. Something else that I really struggled with was, well, this was my understanding. I'm not really sure if it was the actual belief, but this was my understanding, was that whole concept of the fact that you weren't complete until you found your partner. That you were a half, and when you met your partner, they made you a whole. You became this one flesh. In other words, you became a complete person, and that, that's what Adam was lacking back in the garden. And when Eve came, he went, hunky-dory, now I'm a complete person. And I think the one thing that I struggled with that was that kind of when my marriage went on the rocks. I got married when I was JW, fairly young. I wasn't that young. I mean, I was 25, which for JW sounds actually fairly old, but in terms of the real world, people kind of look at me and go, 25, geez, that was young. But anyway, but by 30 it was over. And I struggled when I got divorced because I didn't know who I was, because I defined myself so completely through who my partner was. Because to me, it was, you became this union of these two people and you became this new unit of operation. And then when the other half's gone, you're going, well, who am I? I don't know what is this thing? It's like all these big chunks missing out of my life. There's chunks missing. I don't know how to operate. I don't know how to do stuff. And I think that was an issue as well. And the last thing I want to say as well is that your relationship was based on, kind of questions from readers. What's the view of, questions from readers? What is God's view on oral sex? It was kind of like your bedroom sort of your bedroom functionality was, well, what does the Watchtower say? And I'm thinking, good Lord, like, where was the consensus about who you were as a person? It was this, and if things got really too tumultuous in the marriage, then you'd go and speak to the elders. And then some would like thumb suck whichever, Watchtower issue that he had on like what the answer was to what your problem was in your marriage. And generally the woman was wrong. End of discussion. Like, that's pretty much it. Well, your wife's showing like signs that she's not in subjection. And I'm going crazy, because then you get into like the real world and you're with a partner and you realize that your partner has so much to give you if you just open yourself to the fact that, and I've always maintained this, I think women have this incredible wide range scope view of the world. And as a guy, you can draw so much from that, because there's stuff that you just are completely not aware of at all. And she gives you that information, and take this from where it comes. But in my marriage, what I found was what my wife was looking for was, yes, I've got all these great ideas, but can we please just refine them down to one or two that we can make a decision? Because she had all these great ideas, but she was looking for me to say, can you refine it down with logic to what we should actually be doing? I've got all these great ideas. And so when you understand those nuances of the male and the female in the relationship, it becomes incredibly powerful. But you've got to be open to that. And as a JW, you weren't open to anything that your wife said. Good Lord, the stuff what your wife said. She must just be in subjection and do what you're telling her to do, because you reading the Watchtower and the organization says what you got to do.
It so minimizes a woman. A woman brings so many other
Yeah.
aspects that men don't have to the table. Yet in that religion, that is just minimized and not given any kind of importance. And women, and it's mostly women watching. Someone in the comments said women were demonized, which is true, right? Almost
Absolutely.
If a man had a pornography addiction, they're like, "Are you rendering your due like you should be?" Like, they got the women, and dude, that's your problem, right? I mean, women were really, they put the blame on the women so much, and not use the talents and the gifts that women bring. And it's a beautiful dance. A relationship should be a beautiful dance between two people, not one dominating the other. So thank you for that comment. Christine?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share, for us as women, that it's important, from a hormonal, think of like the animal kingdom, and from a hormonal and a primal, if you are going to date someone and then move into their home, so a woman moving into the man's home is the most ideal, because the house or the place where we live is the man's territory and he has a partner. But if he moves into a woman's house, then he doesn't have territory. She's really the masculine. She's the male, because it's her container, it's her house, and he only has a partner. So it's just connected to the animal kingdom. This is part of what I teach. And it's just like being able to know who you are and what you're attracted to, why you're attracted to certain kind of people. Is it, as women, are we attracted to more of that macho alpha kind of man, or a softer, feminine, creative kind of man? And usually when we're, attracted to that softer man, it's because we're in our masculine. And it's knowing how to be in both. And that's an energy thing, not gender specific. So it's like, I run a business. When I'm at work, I am definitely in my masculine energy. And then when I'm with someone at home, I'm single now, but to be in partnership, I have been learning how to soften as the feminine so that it's not always me feeling like I need to be in control or I can do it better. It's like, no, we have to learn. And relationship is the best place. It's that alchemical marriage on, we can do our own inner work for ourselves. I recommend that first, but then to really deepen, you can only do that in relationship. That has to be that plus minus, that masculine, feminine pole. So just some suggestions for anyone who is looking to be with someone or even taking stock of your current relationship. You can still be in the relationship as the masculine feminine, but knowing what pole you carry and having very open, honest conversations with the people that or your partner, whoever you're intimate with, or wanting to be. It's that preparation.
What a great share. And these are the kinds of things that we need to learn, male and female, during those times when we're single or even if you're in a relationship. I mean, learn these things that Christine's talking about, because these are important things. These are things, these are next level things that's going to help you. Witnesses has kept it so archaic, so archaic. There's so much to the dynamic of the masculine and the feminine. There's so much to the dynamic of energy and frequency and all those things that we bring to the table. Learn about those things. It's going to help you a lot. Judy?
Just to say, when raised or being married so young, and I actually had a good marriage for the first, I was married 25 years, but people that can wake up together, what a blessing, because when one wakes up and the other doesn't, that, the unifying thing was the religion. So when you set out for goals and what you wanted, it was spiritual goals. When you were interviewing someone, what are your spiritual goals? So it's not until later that you're like, I have different goals and they're not in renaissance with my now ex-husband. Like one of us has grown out of it. So I like how you said to take the time. At the time that I did not take the time. I was attracted to somebody else who was broken. And fortunately, in my case, it's worked out good that we mended together, coming from two different broken things, not another XJW, but still it has worked out. That's just, I happen to luck out in that. But yeah, if you can take the time, especially as women, we were never allowed to, our power was played down. So if you are a strong woman, you weren't allowed to be a strong woman. If your natural gift was teaching and talking, you weren't allowed to do that. You had to talk to your householder. I couldn't talk to somebody from the stage. So, I like how Bree is, finding out who she is and becoming strong and knowing these are my deal breakers. These are my goals. This is like, I love to travel. So I want to be with someone that likes experiences and travels and doesn't want to sit at home. And, and that all takes time, none of which we were allotted to have for ourselves. We were always kept busy. And it really was kind of always makes me thought of like teachers who a substitute teacher gives out busy work to keep the classroom in control. And I feel like a lot of the things when we were, as witnesses, we were given busy work that kept us busy, keep us in control so that you didn't have the time that you needed to grow personally.
I like that. One piece of advice I'll give women, don't attach yourself to a man that you have bigger dreams than, because he will subconsciously kick your chair from under you. Okay? If you have big dreams, make sure you align yourself with somebody who can be your cheerleader, that's not intimidated by your light. Okay? Because people, if you have a bigger dream than your man, typically they will then try to dim your light in different ways that you won't even really associate with that. So make sure that if you have a bright light, you get with a bright light. Okay? So life can be what you want it to be. So don't create a life that you're swimming upstream constantly, because that will tire you out. Dean?
Just want to make a comment. I was speaking to somebody recently, and this is a thought that crossed my mind. And this has nothing to do with JW. This is relationships across the board. I think you get two types of people in the world: those people that are completely content with where they are, and 9 to 5, watch the sport on the weekend, meet with mates, barbecue, etc., and kind of just will go with the flow. And then you get those people that want to change things, do things with their life, make things happen. And I think when one of each meets from one side of each group meets, at some point that relationship is doomed to failure because they're just pulling in completely different directions. And I think if you're a kind of go-getter, make things happen kind of person, you kind of need to be with somebody, not necessarily in the same direction, but you got to have a life outside of where you are. You're striving for something, and I think when you're striving with something with somebody else who's striving for something, then you're spurring each other on, and you're inspiring each other. Whereas, like you say, when the word I've heard used is when you were with the deadhead of a guy, he's always kind of going like, gee, well, that's like so much work, and why are you doing that? It's like it doesn't even necessarily need to be kicking you out. It's just this constant eroding of any kind of energy you're trying to put into what you're doing with your life.
So you're talking about mindset, right? A similar mindset.
Yeah.
So remember this. Relationships, it's the Olympics right now, so you know what I'm talking about. Imagine the Olympic rings. They're partly overlapped and they're partly not. So the part of the rings that are overlapped, that middle that's overlapped, that's your relationship. The part that's not overlapped, that's you. That's the part where you keep your autonomy. And some people lose their autonomy, especially, coming from the background of being a witness, you lose your autonomy. You should never lose your autonomy. Now, when you're in resonance, those rings are way more overlapped naturally without even trying. They're mostly overlapped, but there's still going to be some on the outside that's your autonomy. And the less they're overlapped, the more difficult it is because there's just not much overlap. And when you have a bad relationship, normally it doesn't have that much overlap. So the autonomy part is huge. But it's important to, whatever the autonomy is, it's important to allow it, make space so that person can be who they are. So if they got an interest or hobby or something they've been doing forever, don't take that away from the person. Don't make the person, if they like a certain type of music, like to go to a certain kind of concert, and that's not your thing, you either just go with them anyway, or let them go with their girlfriends or whatever, or boyfriend, guy friends. Go do that, right? Allow a person to be who they are and not lose themselves in the relationship, right? It's important that you maintain you, don't lose you. A lot of times people, they become something other than the two people that met, and then they get bored with each other because you're not the person that you met in the first place. Right? So it's important to keep the person that kind of began, because that's where your interest started. Okay, any other closing comments? Anybody else got a thought they want to share before we wrap up? Christine?
I liked how you used the rings from the Olympics. The word to describe it in a relationship is interdependence. So where you are okay to be alone and you're okay to be with someone. So if you are codependent, you are anxious and you can't make decisions on your own, all of those sorts of things. And that the opposite would be avoidant, where you think of when you have a fight, the person that slams the door and goes out. So it's learning how to be not too independent and not codependent, but that in the middle there is interdependence.
Awesome. Penny, any other shares? All right. That was a good one. That was a great topic. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of action on the comments on Facebook. Always an interesting topic. But it's been real. It's been a good conversation. Great way to start your week. Some food for thought, some things to marinate on. But go enjoy your Sunday fun day. Thank you, panel, for being on, taking time out of your day. Thank you for those watching live and those watching on the replay. But we shall see you next week.